So a lot to talk about, including the ongoing salary negotiations for workers in the protective service, the public service. Yesterday we would have had Mr. Gideon Dixon of the Police Service Social and Welfare Association, and I would have referenced the matter relating to T&TEC and the ruling by the Industrial Court, which said that T&TEC didn't have to pay any increase for workers at T&TEC from 2015 to 2017. So let's get some more information on that and find out what the Oilfields Workers Trade Union is doing in relation to that, if they can do anything at all. Reesa Ramlogan-Jodha, Executive Vice President, is joining us now. Ms. Ramlogan-Jodha, good morning and thank you very much for being with us.
Hi, good morning. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much. Let's first of all get a sense of what happened with the T&TEC workers and the fact that the Industrial Court ruled that they aren't obligated or they aren't going to get any salary increase for the period 2015 to 2017. What would have happened?
Correct. Before I get into that, let me just take this opportunity to say a pleasant good morning to Trinidad and Tobago. Special good morning to all workers across Trinidad and Tobago. I have here with me today the president of the T&TEC Central Branch, which is Comrade Nicholas Jones. He's joining me here today. To respond to your question, what happened? Well, in reality, when we looked at that judgment, a number of questions immediately surfaced. One of the things that stood out, actually two of the things that stood out, is the fact that the court did acknowledge that T&TEC workers were deserving of an increase in salary. However, the court would have made mention of the fact that the commission was not in a position to fund an increase. Now, this is the case, despite the fact that the commission did not provide any evidence to support such claim. And even if the evidence was provided, what we need to look at this morning, Rishi, is the fact that T&TEC at this point in time is owed in excess of $1 billion by government agencies. And if that $1 billion is paid, there are so many things that can be done at this point in time in T&TEC. And it's not only about paying an increase in salary, but T&TEC right now has a very aged fleet of vehicles, and it compromises the ability to provide a reliable service to the members of the public. And that payment would definitely assist in a number of areas, including a fleet at T&TEC. We also have a critical shortage of manpower at T&TEC. Materials is an issue. We have quite a number of issues. But unfortunately, that judgment, when we look at the judgment, we see where the court would have ruled in favor of the commission. And it is very unfortunate because history would show that where negotiations are concerned, the union would always be the one to submit proposals. The commission, they always counter-propose. And in more recent times, they have not even been submitting counter-proposals. And that is definitely not reflective of good industrial relations practices. The commission would use the excuse that they're state-owned enterprise and they have to depend on directions from those in authority. But the situation has been reached a very bad place, and it is unfortunate the judgment that came out of the court. It is a very unfair judgment to the workers at T&TEC. This is a period that would have been prior to COVID-19, and it seems as though that wasn't even given consideration. But despite all of it, I must say that the workers at T&TEC continue to do what is required of them. We, as a union, would have reviewed the judgment. We had our lawyers also do a review of the judgment, and it was based on our lawyers' advice that an appeal was filed at the court last week, Tuesday.
Right. So then what is the expectation then, given that the workers didn't get the increase? So you're going to appeal the decision? For sure.
Yes, but you have to bear in mind that judgment did not only treat with a 000 to T&TEC workers. There were a number of other factors that are very questionable in that judgment. And obviously, based on a point of law, the union took the decision to appeal. The outcome is left to be seen, but the reality of it is that the judgment sets a certain precedent, and that definitely had to be treated with by the OWTU.
Because we do have ongoing salary negotiations for other groups. We had the police service, the public service, fire officers and those bodies, they have salary negotiations ongoing. From what Gideon Dixon from the Police Service Social and Welfare Association told us yesterday, based on their meeting with the Chief Personnel Officer, it is not going to be a 000 because there is not going to be a freeze on the negotiation. And they expected to get something. Would you then say that it is unfair? Or how would you sum up that if what Mr. Dixon said is in fact the case and they do get an increase?
Well, definitely it would be unfair, especially based on the point that I made, where the government is the one that is owing T&TEC this large sum of money. And the reality of it is that customers, the everyday customer, if they have two bills, sometime in excess of $50 that piles up, two bills, they are disconnected by T&TEC. But here you have large state-owned enterprises, government agencies that owe millions of dollars, and it seems to be nobody's concern. And who has to pay the price ultimately? The workers at T&TEC. And it must be noted that this judgment with regards to 000 was not only applicable to the members of the OWTU bargaining unit, but it was also so for the Senior Staff Association as well as the Estate Police Association. And what is even even more troubling is that the Estate Police Association would have been for a period that was before OWTU, which would have, and OWTU was at 15 to 17.
So as it is right now, T&TEC workers are working on what, 2015 salaries?
2014 salaries.
2014 salaries.
That
so
is
therefore,
correct.
And with the cost of living going up, I guess we can understand the plight of the workers. I mean, in all sectors, because when you hear unions talk and you realize that, well, 10 years have passed since I've got a salary increase, yet everything is going up. Nobody is really paying attention to that. Have you all had any sort of conversation with T&TEC, the Minister of Labour, in relation to this matter?
No, not just yet. We would have reached out to the commission to have discussions concerning the judgment. There has not been a response by the commission just yet. So the union is awaiting a response, but definitely we will continue to monitor the situation very closely, and we will treat with it based on the situations that arise.
But given the circumstances that the country is in terms of lack of economic growth, if I can put it like that, what would the workers be asking for in terms of an increase then? What was the proposal from the union?
Well, there were a number of things, and people tend to think that when you sit at the negotiating table, it's only to treat with an increase in salary, and that is definitely not the case. I mean, we have instances. Imagine where parties would have agreed that a simple thing as uniforms would be provided for our staff. And years have gone by, and our members of staff would not have had access to what parties agreed to. And there are other things which would look at welfare. Imagine the commission and the union would have made a proposal with regards to the welfare of the workers. The commission, that particular issue had to end up before the court as well. Something as simple as that, the commission could not sit and have a discussion with the union. This is the workers, the most critical aspect of the resources within the organization. These are the ones who ensure that the commission is able to do what they're supposed to do. And to sit down and have a discussion concerning the welfare of the workers, that in itself was a challenge.
When you say the welfare of the workers, what exactly are you referring to?
We would have made a proposal with regards to a welfare facility to ensure, a healthier lifestyle, some form of exposure to physical activities, these kind of things, yeah.
And so the company didn't seem very keen on doing that. How would you respond to the fact that T&TEC has too many workers and it's somewhat inefficient in that way?
Well, I can say here today that T&TEC does not have too much workers. In fact, the commission would have conducted a manpower audit. Well, they claim to have conducted a manpower audit, which was completed in 2017. And it must be noted that this was an in-house audit. The results of that audit, based on what they said, is that we were critically short, especially in the field. And what the commission has been doing, instead of filling these shortages by promotions or filling of vacancies, hiring, the commission has opted to utilize a parallel workforce, which we would call contractors, to fill the shortages within the organization. And this is very, very concerning, especially since most of our skilled jobs are being given to contractors.
So there is need then to increase the manpower within T&TEC. Now we see that there is a restructuring of WASA. Are you all concerned that if the union puts too much pressure on the government for any sort of increase allowances, that they may come out and say, well, let's restructure the entire company, as we are seeing happening with WASA, because WASA workers have been complaining as well for a while?
And that is why I would have said that that appeal was not based only on 000. There were a number of points of law in that judgment that raised serious red flags, and we had to take the approach that was taken.
Yeah. So
With regards to the restructuring, let me just say, with regards to the restructuring, I believe it was on the 19th of March, there was some statements out in the public via the media where the line minister, our T&TEC's line minister, which is the Honorable Marvin Gonzalez, would have spoken of a business plan that was submitted by T&TEC to the line ministry. And he would have also made the article would have also made reference to restructuring at T&TEC.
Yes.
Now, that is the first time that the union would have heard of any such thing. We reached out immediately via letter to the general manager, Mr. Kelvin Ramsok. And this is the case because since, I believe it was the end of November into December of last year, there has been no board in place at T&TEC. To date, there is still not a board at T&TEC. An essential service, a state-owned enterprise, there's no board in place. We reached out to the general manager asking for clarity on whether or not there was a restructuring exercise taking place at T&TEC. To date, there has been no response. We also reached out to the general manager asking for the submission of that business plan to the OWTU, which is, of course, the recognized majority union at T&TEC. To date, again, there has been absolutely no response from the general manager.
Yeah. How come we haven't really heard much about this issue for the past 6 years? Is it that, the negotiation is from 2014 is when they would have got their last increase. So the period is for the last 8 years or so. How come this matter only really just came into the public domain?
You're referring to the negotiations in particular?
Yeah.
Well, parties would have been meeting. We would have met at the level of the ministry. It was eventually escalated to the court because the commission never came with a position even at the level of the ministry. The matter would have gone to the court. And the thing is, we would have expected that the court would have looked at all of the facts in the matter. When the commission made the claim that they were unable to fund an increase in salary, it was at that point in time, in the absence of any supporting information, the union felt as though the proper thing would have been to have the commission submit the necessary documents to support their claim to the court. That was not done. And in the absence of that information, a ruling of 000 was made. And that in itself is a serious issue that needs to be looked at.
So
yes, sorry.
So over the years, the negotiation was ongoing until you reached the point where it had to go before the court.
That is correct, yes.
So the appeal matter has been filed. You have filed to appeal this ruling by the industrial court.
Last Tuesday, yes.
What is going to happen then? Are you all just going to wait for the appeal to come out? What is the plan of the union?
No, well, first of all, we are well aware that that matter may not be called probably until next year, late next year. We are hoping that before the end of this year, we have some sort of a sit-in before the court to set dates for hearing and whatnot. But the reality is that the union would have reached out to the commission despite the judgment. As I would have indicated before, we reached out to the commission to have discussions arising out of the judgment that was given. And we are yet to receive a feedback from the commission. But this has been the relationship between parties for quite some time. It seems as though the T&TEC is not willing to come and sit at the table to have discussions with the union. Let me give you an example. There were major ease in restrictions with regards to COVID-19. Since the Prime Minister's first announcement in March, I believe it was on the 4th of March, the union would have indicated its intention on the 11th of March to meet with the Commission. We submitted a proposal the week following the 11th of March, asking that parties meet on the 17th of March. To date, that meeting is yet to take place. Something as critical as this, a meeting to ensure that T&TEC workers can continue to provide a reliable service by minimizing cost and maximizing productivity, and the Commission has not yet come to the table to have a discussion with us.
Right. So there seems to be a problem with that. Now, I just want to switch the conversation slightly because we're still waiting for information on the report for the power outage. And I heard Ansel Roger reference it once again on Friday that, you know, we saw this incident take place. We haven't really heard much from it. But it's the workers who must be credited for what they would have done in order to get Trinidad and Tobago back to some semblance of normalcy on the 19th of February.
The 16th of February.
16th of February. The union, what are their thoughts on this matter and the length of time we're taking to get the report? Should the report have taken so long? Up to now, we haven't seen it.
All right. So let me first of all make it abundantly clear, and I would like to take this opportunity to clarify what would have occurred in the minds of the members of the public, because somehow the members of the public were led to believe that there was a relation between that blackout and the judgment which came out of the industrial court. The blackout took place on the 16th of February. The judgment that was received came out on the 18th of February. The OWTU had absolutely no clue as to what was going to be in that judgment. Yeah? So there's absolutely no relation there. With regards to the incident which resulted in the blackout, one has to ask the question about the involvement of contractors in this particular situation. And I say that because T&TEC spends large sums of money training our in-house personnel, and in particular here now, our line clearing crews, to do the work that they are required to do on the outside. But what you find happening is that T&TEC has been abusing the clause that deals with contract labor, so much so that a parallel workforce has been created with contractors. And I say that because you have crews that are assigned to conduct line clearing work. They go out on the outside there. They are awaiting outages to do what they have to do. Outages not coming, only to realize that those that are responsible for ensuring the outage have been sent to facilitate contractors as opposed to T&TEC crews, right? It raises the question of productivity. What is happening? Is it a deliberate act on the part of the Commission to make it seem as though T&TEC workforce is unproductive? With regards to the blackout incident, was that particular feeder the responsibility of a contractor, or was it the responsibility of an in-house crew? When the Commission spends all this money in training with our crews are fully aware of what is required of them. The issue with the contractors is that they don't have the relevant training to be able to do what they have to do on the outside there efficiently. So whether or not an act of God resulted in a tree falling, this blackout was not supposed to take place. If that tree, a simple thing as a tree, if that tree was dealt with in the manner in which it was supposed to be dealt with, this would not be happening. And then obviously the question has to be raised about, okay, the tree fell, this happened, and what was TGU's responsibility in all of this? Despite all of that, PowerGen workers as well as T&TEC workers, both of them, the membership of both organizations falls under the OWTU. OWTU has the recognized majority union status for both entities. They would have worked around the clock to ensure that a supply could have been restored to the members of the public, and that is commendable.
Yeah, the thing is, I heard this tree falling thing before. It's been touted about in the public domain that a tree fell on one of the plants, causing the power outage nationwide. But I remember it being said on that same day that it had nothing to do with an incident like that. It could have been something else. And so, in lieu of the report coming out in a timely manner, the government and the T&TEC, it has left the public to speculate and go as far as saying, well, what are they trying to hide from us?
Well, I was very happy to see that our line minister, Mr. Gonzalez, made it absolutely clear at a press conference, I believe it was the day following the incident, that the outage was not as a result of human interference, because that is what was being touted about in the public domain.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, our President General would have made it abundantly clear that the union's membership had absolutely no involvement in what would have transpired. Our only involvement would have been to ensure that a supply was restored to the members of the public. With regards to the length of time that it has taken, you are quite correct, and the union is in agreement that sufficient time has since gone by, and that report has to be made public so that the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago can have an understanding of what would have transpired on that day.
Even if it was just a tree falling on the plant.
Yes. Now, there are root causes to problems, and while the tree would have roots, that is not the cause. So we have to go to the root cause of the problem. And I'm certain in this particular instance, if that report is an in-depth and accurate report, more than likely we are going to see some inefficiencies in the management being highlighted.
So it sounds as though the union has some information that is not yet out into the public domain. That is what it comes across as.
Well, this is the OWTU, but at the end of the day, we have to give the investigation the opportunity to reveal what would have transpired.
Yeah. And I'm sure right after that, we're going to get a press conference from Mr. Roger and other members of the union to
Most
share
definitely.
their thoughts on the report as well.
Yes.
Before you leave us this morning, Ms. Ramlogan-Jodha,
Sure.
do we have generally, the perception is that the industrial court is in favor or generally rules in favor of the workers. In this incident with the T&TEC salary negotiation, it did not. Do you have confidence then in the industrial court?
Well, okay. To respond to that question, the industrial court is supposed to be unbiased, right? And what we are seeing in recent times, it leads one to question whether or not the judges that sit at the industrial court, if they sit at a place where the judgments that come out of the court are really free of any sort of outside interference. That especially in the T&TEC case, because all our matters go before the Essential Services Division at the Industrial Court, T&TEC, of course, being a state-owned enterprise. So there are some serious concerns there, and those are concerns that the union intends to raise at all levels. We are really hoping that the line minister would meet with the union, because we would have requested a meeting on more than one occasion, and that meeting is still outstanding. But we are really hoping to have those discussions to see how best we can treat with some of these real issues that are facing T&TEC.
So I think we wait to get some more information. Do you think, before you go, one more question, as you mentioned that, do you think unions make it difficult for themselves by, as soon as a meeting is finished, they come into the public domain and give so much information, and it somewhat, in many cases, makes the minister or government looks bad? We would have seen the Communication Workers Union talking about the amount of people expected to be retrenched at TSTT as they undergo their restructuring as well. And the company is saying, well, I'm not going to be saying anything in the public domain right now until the negotiations are complete. Do you think that unions put themselves in that bad position?
No, definitely not. Because at the end of the day, members of the public needs to be fully aware as to what is taking place. As the OWTU in particular, as a union, there are no secrets. We have nothing to hide. Our membership, as well as workers on the whole and the entire citizenry, needs to understand what is taking place, especially at T&TEC, because T&TEC is a state-owned enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. When it comes to workers, they need to know what is happening. If the company or the minister fails to want to give us responses to our questions, then somebody has to do it, although we'll only get one side of the story.
And that's the thing is, sometimes, because of the fact that this information is out there, it now propels them to do what is required of them. Sometimes we would write and we would ask over and over. And only when that goes out into the public that we would have been writing and writing, then here we, as the union, get an invitation for a meeting. And we are left to see what is going to happen in this particular situation.
Yeah, so we await to get some more information on how things go with this
Sure.
appeal matter that has been filed. And I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more from the Oilfields Workers Trade Union. Ms. Reesa Ramlogan-Jodha, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Reesa Ramlogan-Jodha, Executive Vice President of the Oilfields Workers Trade Union. No salary increases for T&TEC workers. She said they filed a matter with the appeal court on that ruling from the industrial court that they're going to get no salary increase for the bargaining period 2015 to 2017. And also, does the union have more information about the power outage that we saw, and why is the government taking so long to put forward a report?